What is going on, everybody? And in this video, we're providing a state of the market and stock picks for February 3rd, 2023. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, consider subscribing as we do provide daily and weekly updates to get you prepared for the day and the week ahead in this glorious market. Now, as you can see, one of the top most well-known companies is essentially missed expectations, worst earnings essentially since 2016. Numbers as far as Apple misses on EPS of 1.88 versus 1.94, and revenue one 117.2 billion versus 121.1 billion. Ouch. Doing extremely bad, and not just them. Amazon is taking a major hit. Google, major hit. For those people out there also that trade in crypto, SI is under investigation for essentially its affiliation with FTX. So everything just comes out all at one time. Apple hasn't had any kind of conference call yet as well. So I'm going to leave this up here as I ramble, and then I'll jump to XPX. But so all the things are essentially measuring out to what we've been talking about on this channel. You can't believe in the pumps just because the sediment, the true sediment of what's really going on, is not correct. This is why I talk about you have to go off of earnings. You have to go off of specific things, and you have to read into it. The markets aren't easy to navigate at all. If it was as easy as reading a report, then you would know, how to do any move in the stock market, right? It's not that easy. And things aren't always easy to gauge. You can assume, right? Like I talk about, coming up with a thesis is extremely important. Having multiple mentors, learn multiple different things do help. But one thing I know has always been consistent is essentially supply and demand. Events override everything. Nothing is priced in, right? If you want to go off of priced in, the market, you have to understand the market goes off of algo and headline news. The media and everybody else is well aware, I think, of what is currently that's the way that essentially the stock market is moving. So if there's a news article that hits the line, the algorithms will ingest that and start selling if need be, or buying if need be. So being said, right now, things are not good. Again, Tesla did not do any better. Right? Tesla barely skated by the skin of their teeth, yet it popped and it ran up 100 points. Essentially, from just a couple days ago or a week ago, it was down around $100, and then it ran up 100 points. And all earnings up to this point have been horrific, barely getting by, massive gouges, more layoffs coming. Again, all things I said would happen with high rate increases. We've talked about this for months. Now you're starting to see the impact of what that is actually doing. And we still have a lot more rate increases that are still coming on the back end of this. This is the pain that Powell has been talking about. He forewarned everybody back in December. We're going to see a lot of pain before things get better. But again, increases still have to continue. More layoffs. There's more layoffs today. It's like every day there's massive amounts of layoffs that are continuing to pile up. So this is a problem. The stock market is finally starting to catch up to a lot of those things. And so tomorrow is going to be interesting nonetheless. We had, like I said, we had Apple. That was the key. That was your cornerstone that could save the market. And now, again, worst earnings since 2016. And it's going to get worse. Q1 and Q2 are going to get a lot worse in the next couple earnings cycles. Now we're in a downward cycle as well, coming into a downward cycle. So how much more sell pressure are we going to get? Again, we've been selling heavy. Of course, you're going to get a bear market bounce because, right, a lot of premium needs to be built back up into essentially the sell side, right? We don't know if it's going to recover. We don't know what Powell's going to say. now that we got full earnings. Now that we have earnings from Apple, Tesla, Amazon, the banks, we can pretty much make our move from here. We don't need all the rest of the earnings. There's tons more earnings to come out, but we don't need them now. We got the industry leaders, we got the banks. That's what matters. Now, what we're going to do is see how much more pain the consumer can take. Again, we've talked about a lot of things, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but things will it essentially soak up tomorrow. Tomorrow, you're going to start getting tons of downgrades on these major tech stocks. It really depending on what happens with this conference call with Apple. They're typically pretty good, and they don't provide any kind of forward guidance. They've been very good about that, just because there's no way of them gauging. So why make any kind of prediction when you don't know? You just kind of show up and see what happens. So we'll see what happens. And again, like I said, the lockdowns in China were not good. Inflation is starting to come back in a lot of in commodities, right? So that's something you need to keep in mind. We don't want inflation creeping back up. Our next inflation report isn't till February 14th on Valentine's Day, but it's going to be an adjusted new report. It's only going to essentially entail 1 year, not 2 years like it normally has been. And so there's even talked about suspending the core. That should tell you something. If they're trying to suspend the core, what are they trying to hide, right? So, being said, yes, there are certain things you have to look at. You have to pay attention to. You can't really go off of data. Core, you can go off so much because that's going to move essentially the market. It's going to pivot the market in general. It's going to pivot the algos. Powell will pivot the algos. Ultimately, right now, again, we've had a big rally so far. Banks, again, nothing has been doing good. Banks and value have been kind of just consolidating right now. Tech has caught up. Now the truth about tech has come out. Now does everything start falling and selling? Now we get into that normal cycle. So that's something we have to watch, keep an eye on. Now, very much so, this market has been extremely weird as well. So even though these earnings have been bad, something I noticed even going into Google today, going into Google's earnings, they were pricing in like a negative 15% on their cloud, right? They're throwing these expectations so far in the dirt that if they hit expectations, then that's a good sign. But when you already adjusted it to be so bad, right? Like anything above that is causing these stocks to just shoot up. And so it's not making any sense to think that we're recovering and stuff. That's just not happening. In the growth recession, all that things, and something I've heard about today as well is, as far as the job numbers, right? People have been furloughed and people are starting to come back. That's why we're getting these crazy numbers on furloughs, right? And so we have to see. We still have tons of people that are getting laid off left and right. They're still on severance packages. We should still start seeing people here this next month or so. Those numbers should start reflecting true numbers on top of things in the next couple months. So this next quarter, Q1, I think is going to be extremely nasty on the next earnings cycle. Q2 probably really bad. And we'll see what happens, whatever other black swan events occur during that time. If the market wants to start selling and going to panic mode, I think we'll see a true bottom when the market has its last panic attack, essentially. At that point, we'll see a true bottom, and then we'll recover. It's not going to be a quick recovery. I'm aware of that, but it will be a very choppy way back up just because of the way the market is. And hopefully we do get inflation under control. I'm hoping that we do, so that we're really left with is dealing with the Fed and rates, and that's all we'll continue to deal with for the next while. So being said, I've kind of beat that with a dead horse. We'll see how this does end up. A lot of downgrades. Apple, you want to see if this thing breaks below 140. If this breaks below 140, this thing is going to start coming down pretty heavy. Again, we've had this massive run I talked about. You don't want parabolic runs like this. This is unnecessary. Now you should be retracing back to 50% of that move. So you're still looking at this thing dropping potentially down to 137. we're going to start getting out of earnings mode. We had a bad earnings. This thing may drop a little bit tomorrow, then start chopping, but you want it to hold the 146. I think that's doubtful. I think this thing will break back down below that and just start selling off, or maybe just we consolidate roughly around the 142. We'll have to see there. But the general market, again, I talked about 4,200. We had hopium push up to 4,200. This thing needs to pull back. Question is it going to keep going, and we're going to go up to 4,300 based off of just now. All you really have is Powell's hopium statement is all you're really running off of. Things are bad, right? This thing should pull back at least to 4K, especially now with Apple, Amazon, and Google. Things could get pretty nasty tomorrow, pretty bloody. Maybe they don't. This market has been extremely weird, but at least today you got to see the truth of what's really going on. So I talk about the earnings are going to reflect what's really going on. Forward guidance and downgrades tomorrow. Our forward guidance, you'll get more forward guidance tonight, but then tomorrow you get all your downgrades. We'll see if the market can gaps down overnight, and then take it from there. So really watching this again, bulls, you want us to break above 4,200. I really don't see where you're going to get fuel for that, but in this market, who knows? If it breaks down below the 4140 mark, this thing's going to push all the way back down, at least to the 4075, if not even further down than that, to 4025 potentially. Again, depends on how much fuel we get. We do have a lot of fuel to the downside. People really had a lot of hope that they come through. Not the case. True numbers are being reflected, so we'll see there. Bitcoin, especially with all the SI stuff today, this thing might gap down overnight, so you need to be careful with this. This thing could really start selling if that news article gets out and people start panicking about the USDC. We're going to have to see what happens there. So the dollar in itself looked like it was about ready to die, but popped up again. Bears, you want this thing back over 105. Bulls, you want this thing to keep selling down into the below 100. We'll see there. Tesla, massive rip today. Tag just about 200 today. See this thing at least selling back down to the 157. We'll see what happens there, but again, we have fuel now. We got more bad news about things showing true face. So we'll see. Apple, I don't really need to talk about. We just went over Aapl. BA, again, if this thing breaks below 205, start seeing some heavy selling. Like I said, we've been stagnant. This thing is looking for bad news or good news, and it's got a lot more bad news today. So we'll see if this thing starts selling. Looking for support at the 195. If you want it to continue going up, it needs to break 120 tomorrow. Banks, again, same thing, consolidating, waiting for some news. Needs to hold the 137 if it breaks that. It's down to 133, breaks that, 129. If you want the bulls to break out, this thing needs to head over 144. Again, there's no good news. So if we do start pumping tomorrow, it's not going to make sense, to be honest. But just be careful, mindful, and you play whatever's in front of you. And then as long as you got a plan and risk management in place, then you should be perfectly fine. So with all that being said, there's no point in going too crazy. I'll share more in the weekly update. It would be good to get a digestion of what's occurring with Apple, Amazon, and Google today. And then we'll take it from there. So if you made this far, I do appreciate you. Go ahead and drop a like button. Until next time, I'll see you guys later.